Alright, what I'm going to be making is a juicer. Basically a citrus juicer with a cone in the middle and then a little trough on the outside. Right here is exactly 2.5 pounds. I think that 2.5 pounds, looking at it especially, is going to be a bit much, but I'd rather have a little bit more than I need than not enough. So we'll start with the basics of centering. So the only oddity to the juicer is the fact that you're throwing two parts. You're throwing the cone in the middle, and you're also throwing the outside rim. So, and that knocking sound is just the bat. It doesn't fit exactly right. So the holes on it have been bored out a little bit. It doesn't help with centering, that's for sure. I'm going to open all the way on this. I'm going to open all the way to the bat, or to the wheel head. I'm going to open all the way down. Okay, and I'm going to open out. I open up about 2.5 inches, I would say. Probably about that far. As far as I want the base of the cone inside that I'll put the citrus on. Right there's about 2.5 inches. Okay. Then I'm gonna leave this much of a slant. I don't usually leave, I like it a little bit more of a 90-degree angle, but I'm gonna leave a little bit of clay inside here for myself. So I'm gonna start up here. I'm gonna push as if I'm opening the pot in a new spot. I'm gonna go pretty far. I'm going to go down to my usual, which is about 1/4 inch to the wheel head. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit. I like to do the outside first, just so that I can get it out of my way. So I'm going to bring this out. Basically bringing my thumb towards my belly button. Yeah, even looking at it now, I'm like, that's way too much clay. So probably about 2 pounds, 2.5 just to be on the safe side the first time you try it. But so I'm going to compress this a little bit, and just to be in good habit. Pretty confident in it, but just to measure the bottom, so about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit less than 1/4 inch there. But this, I don't trim a foot on the bottom, but I do want enough clay to make sure it's sturdy enough for when I poke the holes in it, because I'm going to poke holes in this area, which I'll talk more about in just a minute. First I'm going to throw, now that I've got it open wide, I'm going to throw this little cone. So I'm going to pull this clay up straight, kind of in like a volcano. I want to be a little outside hand dominant so that I can go in a little bit. Compress this before I start. But I'm going to pull this up and in. I don't want this to be too thin. Okay, so I don't want it as thin as, say, I would throw the walls of a mug or something like that, because I'm going to end up having to carve part of it out to make the ridges that will help scrape out some of the citrus. So I'm going to double check the thickness. Down here is pretty thick. Right here, I don't really want to do too much more to it. Right there it's thin, so I'm going to let up on my squeeze and just make sure it's nice and straight. Okay, and on this cone, right now it's way too tall. I am going to collar it in, but I want to make sure that I have enough. I can always cut excess off, but if I couldn't enclose this completely, then I didn't have enough clay and I have to start over. So I want to make sure I have enough, and if it's too tall of a cone, I can always level it off with a needle tool. I'm going to get all the water out of here because I'm about to enclose this. And again, it's open all the way down to the wheel on the inside here. So I can see the black of my plastic bat. Okay, got all the little throwing lines out. Now I'm going to get both hands wet, and I'm just going to collar in right here. Whenever I collar, I try to get 3 points of pressure, if not more. So I try to collar 1, 2, and then my thumb, 3 points of pressure. Try not to get any water on the inside. So now I'm going a little lower, slowly pinching inward. Focusing now on the shape a little bit. So you can see I still have a little bit of a hole at the top. Okay, now I'm going to enclose it entirely. So some of my students would like to call it quits right there, but you really got to make this a nice, clean, almost machined shape. So I'm going to take my rib, metal rib, and I'm just going to kind of curve it and start at the very bottom here and just get that nice even slant all the way to the top. You can even make a point. On this one, I'm not going to make a point. You can make it to a point, but I like to give a little bit of a notch up here like this. A little bit of a slant. I've just found that it works a little better. I'm going to smooth out that line a little bit, but just want to double check all the way down, make sure everything's nice, even. Keep in mind too, when you're doing this, it's going to look a little bigger than what you may want it because it is going to shrink. So smooth out that little line. I use this as a measurement for my carvings. Later I'll take a ribbon tool and I'll carve my little lines out that'll help get out the inside of the citrus. Also, I had talked about a minute ago, making holes. Let me dry up the water. Making the holes in this part of the platform so that the juice can get through. I have a little straw that I use, just a plastic straw, and I poke holes. And the way that I measure it is I make 3 lines. I do this after trimming too. I make 3 lines, like so. And then I'll just stagger. I'll make one that's straight off the line that I make, that I carve in with the ribbon tool, but I'll make 1 dot here. Then I'll stagger the next line. So I'll make one in between each of these ones, if that makes sense. I'll make another video on the trimming of it. So now I need to throw the trough out here at the top, which every once in a while I knock off center while I'm throwing this part. I'm going to compress those lines out because I'll make those again once I trim. I didn't throw it off too bad out here, but I am going to lift it a little bit just by recentering. Okay. Oops, I slowed it down a little too much. So now I'm going to pull this up just like any pole. I want to throw it almost like a bowl. So the first pole I go straight up. Next one I'm going to go out at a little bit more of a slant or a concave because I want that nice curve inside. Compress my lip. Okay, so this one I'm going to go out at a little bit more of a slant. But I want to make sure I push that skirt in pretty heavily this time around. I'm really going to push right there. And then I'm pushing out from the inside now, and I'm just going to carry that up. And out. It's almost a 45-degree angle. Got a little bit of a beginner's hump down here, so I'm going to start from the top of it and work my way towards the bottom with a little bit of water. Just to round it out nicely. Anytime you throw something wide too, they have a tendency when they dry, they pull up a little bit. So just keep that in mind when you throw this outside portion. And again, 2.5 pounds like I had estimated before I started is a bit much. I'd probably cut a little bit of this off. I'm gonna leave it just for the sake of I'm gonna use this for a bowl now that I think of it. It wasn't the original intention, but I'm gonna leave it. Now I'll take my rib inside. Now I'm using the round side. And I'm going to go all the way down, just make sure it's nice and machined or contoured, concaved. And this one's almost the size of a chip and dip. Right now I'm just pushing in so that it's nice and flat on those areas I can still see water from the rib. There we go. So now it would be just cleanup time. I don't want to put too much pressure out here. Cave in the outside, but this is a huge juicer. Okay, so then give it a day to dry. The next day, I'd flip this over on hopefully a bisque piece that's about this size here, about this size. That way it'll stick, but it won't slide around. It won't dig into my piece, but I like a nice bisque cylinder or trimming chuck of some sort. Sometimes I've used buckets with paper towels. But just to give you the gist, after it's trimmed and it's leather hard, you would take this and you would dig. So I usually make a mark. I pretend my wheel's a clock, but I'll make a mark here at 3 o'clock. Get that 3 o'clock over to the other side, right there. Make a mark. Okay, now those are both top to bottom. Make a mark. And one more over here, and these will be my longer ones. The ones between that will be a little bit shorter. So once, again, you would wait until this is leather hard, but this is what I was talking about when I make that cone. I don't want it to be too thin because I'm gonna carve this out. Like so. It'll carve a little bit smoother, a little bit cleaner when it's leather hard. Okay, so I would make those 4, then I would do one in between each of those, and then sometimes I'll do like shorter ones down here just for the sake of design, not so much function on the citrus. So it would have at least 8 lines. Sometimes you can do odd numbers as well. Down here, once I trim, again I'll make my 3 lines. And I'll do the staggered holes, and I have a straw that I poke through there. If it's past leather hard, there's no real helping you. It's hard to push the straw through. Some of my students in the past also have made like a small spout. Instead of the holes, they'll come here and they'll make a spout so that they can juice in here and then pour out, but it does lend to a lot of pulp and some seeds. So just FYI, if you don't like the spout, you can always straighten that back out by just compressing the lip. Okay, and that is the juicer.